let's just get into it. I'm really getting into YouTube and streaming and producing video content, and I feel like it's just a much better way to interact with people than just responding to questions on Facebook or Reddit. So let's just do it that way. Okay, I will answer any questions that are serious and not just troll questions. But I'm looking forward to doing this, so let's get in. Okay, so Tommy Kelly, let's start with Tommy. Hey Tommy, by the way, thanks for sharing the book so much online, and I really dig your work also, and so it's been really cool to see you sharing the book. By the way, let's just start off with, let me show you the book. So this is John Dee and the Empire of Angels, which is this is now my 8th book. This is a 560-page hardback that is the ultimate guide to magic and the occult. Just this morning, actually Mitch Horowitz just tweeted out this morning saying that he can't imagine this book ever being surpassed as a history of Dee or Enochian, which was a very touching comment. It's fully illustrated. You can see that it's full of all kinds of art and engravings, and it's got a full set of Enochian watchtowers and tablets in it that I painstakingly assembled by hand. And this is the full history of not just John Dee and Edward Kelly and their work with Enochian, but also Aleister Crowley and Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism and Elias Ashmole and Jack Parsons and Marjorie Cameron and the Babylon working, and it takes it all the way up to the modern day and talks about chaos magic also. And as many of you know, I've been a chaos magician for 20 years, and one of the most interesting things that I discovered in the research for this book is how much you can find hints of chaos magic going back. You can find hints of it in Edward Kelly's writing. You can find hints of it in certainly Crowley's writing, where I think that the true secrets, as it were, or the true genesis of chaos magic, I argue in this book, is actually not in the 1970s. It's not in Carroll and Hine and Ray Sherwin and all the people who formulated the chaos current, or even really Austin Spare, which is a bit of a controversial statement. But you can see chaos magic in the Aethers, in Crowley and Neuberg's work in the Enochian Aethers, in particularly the 4th and 5th Aether, in their Enochian workings in Algeria. And the god Chaos is born as, the beast 666 is actually called Chaos in the Aethers, and is the male counterpart of the goddess Babylon, which is something that the chaos magic writer Joel Barocco picked up on in the early 2000s. Who was, a chaos magic troll before Facebook even existed. So I really brought that out in this book. And so what this book is it's a history of the last 500 years of magic, but this book is not just a book about magic. This book is magic. In the same way that, some of Kenneth Grant's books, back in the day when we found Kenneth Grant's books as young magicians, those were truly occult and magical works. This book is magic in the sense that it's going to completely destroy everything that you think you know about magic, even if you're the most chaotic of the chaots. It will destroy everything you think you know about magic and rebuild it in a new and much more coherent form. Okay, so that's the book. It's out today, actually. It just came out. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble. Unfortunately, it's not out in the UK until the end of May or mid-May, but it's out everywhere in the US right now. You can order it, and I'm also offering a free course on angelic and Enochian magic, which is free to anybody who buys the book before the end of this week, so before the 21st. And you can see that if you go to magick.me, which is my school for magic, and it's the first thing. It's Introduction to Angelic and Enochian Magic. I'll put a link to it in the thread. And again, this is free for anyone as long as you buy the book or you pre-order it if you're in the UK. Oops. Okay, I was dropping out and buffering there for a second. If that happens, I'm just going to reboot the stream. So I was saying that this course is free for anyone who pre-orders the book, or also who buys the ebook, physical or ebook, and then just sends me proof of purchase through the email address that is on the page for the course. So I posted that in the Facebook thread, and I will post it. Actually, here, let me post this. I will post a link to it in here. Okay, so now also check the YouTube. I posted it in the show notes. Okay. So let's get into, with that out of the way, let's get into the questions. Okay, so let's start with Tommy. So Tommy asks, are you oh, fuck's sake. Okay, we should be back. Sorry, I realized I had my VPN on, so hopefully this will fix that. And we should be coming back. Hello. Let's make sure this is back. Okay. Okay, we should be back. So, sorry, just VPN issues with the connection, so we should be good now. Okay, let's get straight into it. Let's get into questions, and let's see, where are we at? Okay, so Tommy Kelly asks, are you hopeful for the future of humanity? Yes and no. So, I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful that there are some very positive futures coming, and I think the things that I'm most hopeful for are space travel, private space travel, and the potential that is, people like Elon Musk obviously are leading the way on that, and that's something that I've been involved in, also working with space industry people, because I think that the future of humanity really is in space, and that's, you know, obviously something that was so clear, that Jack Parsons made so clear in his magical work, and that he understood so clearly, that if we're to survive as a species, we have to get off-world just because we're running out of space for our population. So I think that all the efforts to colonize Mars, for instance, right, that I'm extremely hopeful for. And I'm excited about some new technologies like blockchain, although there's a lot of nonsense with blockchain also, and just pure greed. But I am excited about the possibility of technologies like blockchain to truly shake up the way that things are done, and to do things much in a much more enlightened and decentralized fashion. I think that blockchain will really cut up control in the way that Burroughs always hoped, and will kind of cut up the world economic system. I'm also hopeful for AI in some senses, and I think that, in the sense that I think that a strong AI may possibly be a very good, stand a good chance of fixing a lot of our issues on the planet. That said, there's a lot that I'm not hopeful about, obviously. And this book, obviously, I've talked so much about the apocalypse. And the apocalypse, as you should know as spiritual people, I hope, is the apocalypse is not just a physical event. The apocalypse is the ongoing degradation of the spiritual tenor of humanity, and the spiritual, I wouldn't say ability, but the spiritual qualities of humanity. So I think that while our technology is progressing, our spirituality and our contact with the inner world is not, and that's why magic and spirituality and what you guys are interested in, which is the great work, is so important, and is critically important in a way that our society doesn't understand and doesn't give it credit for. So if you are into magic and you are pursuing the great work and you are into the occult, I just want to say to you, it's incredibly important, and thank you for being into it. You know, when I first started getting into magic, I knew maybe I could count the people I knew on one or two hands who were into the occult. And now it's become much more popular because of the internet, which is great. And people can get access to information that we didn't have before. So I have hope in that, and I just want to congratulate you and encourage you in continuing to pursue the great work, as it were, even if the people around you don't get it, or or the world doesn't reward you for it. Because when we, somebody who's into magic or into spirituality, you're somebody who is concerned with being in touch with the inner worlds in yourself. And that's what we need as a species. We need people who are actively pursuing wisdom. I said last night, I did a appearance on Leak Project again, and I said that magic almost turns the accumulation of wisdom into like a video game, right? Where you're constantly kind of racking up experiences and spiritual insights, and that's kind of cool, right? So I encourage you to just keep going with that, because when we lose that as a species, we're lost. We're lost forever. So we need people who are able to take on the role of shamans and who are able to navigate the inner worlds for people. And I know you're chaos magicians, so you're well into the edgelordery and the being Coranzonic and stuff like that. But it's okay. You'll grow out of it. You'll grow out of it. It's a phase. It's an important phase, and I think the best part of chaos magic is the ability to paradigm shift and the ability to very seriously go through lots of different spiritual traditions and learn things from them without being bound by them. That, I think, is probably the core ability of chaos magic. That's the most important part of chaos magic, is to be able to slide in and out of different realities without being bound by them. That's much more important than whatever Peter Carroll's kind of like pseudo math equations were, or the 4chan X edgelordery or whatever it is. Okay, next question. Tommy asked a bunch of questions, so let me skip. I'll come back to Tommy. Anima asks, how did you meet Jen? I just went and introduced myself. I was working as the books editor for Disinformation at the time, and I went to interview Jen for an article for Disinfo, and ended up becoming Jen's intern. I told the full story on the latest podcast I did with Duncan Trussell, which you can find if you go to my website, which is just jasonlouv.com, and then go to the podcast section. I'm archiving all of my appearances, and go to I've got the newest Duncan Trussell one there. Okay. Let's see. Stefan asks, in an interview about your book, you mentioned being skeptical of Enochian magic. So I'm wondering what your take on spirit work in general is, and whether you actively use certain practices yourself. Okay, that's an excellent question. I'm not necessarily skeptical of spirit work, but hold on. It's actually freezing here. I got to turn the heater on. Okay. I'm not skeptical of spirit work because I think that it's very real and very effective, and is not, as I'm sure you guys know Sarah Reck, right? So Sarah Reck has this hilarious phrase called psych model, where she's constantly on magicians for using this entry-level psych model, as she calls it, which I think is hilarious. But she touches on something real there, which is that when you do things like Goetia or Voodoo or some of these other things, like that shit is real, okay? And Enochian, like that stuff is real in as much as it can drastically and dramatically affect the quality of your life and of your mental health, and is not something to be played with, particularly the demonic stuff like Goetia or certainly Voodoo or Palo or things like that. And one of the traps that chaos magicians can fall into is thinking that it's all in their head, or that it's all, archetypes or things like that, and that they can have control over all of it by paradigm shifting, or, the various tricks that chaos magicians play. This isn't really the case, and if you stick around in the occult world to the point where you meet heavy hitters and you end up dealing with serious occultists, particularly ones from other cultures where they don't have this kind of like postmodernization of magic, then you know it's you can get mugged real quick, or simply just come up a reality that you can't handle. So I'm not skeptical of it at all. I think that spirit work is quite real, but I am trepidatious about it, and I do caution people. Like, for instance, at Magick.me in my courses, I don't teach spirit work. I don't teach Goetia. I don't teach any of this stuff, because I think that what can happen is people can walk into those systems thinking that it's all psychological metaphor, and the next thing they know, they're doing deals, or they're doing deals that they don't think are real and that they can't back up, or making slips, like getting out of the circle and things like this. And having done a lot of that stuff in my life and having made mistakes with it, I could tell you don't want to do that, right? You want to, look, if you're going to do, as a chaos magician, if you're going to explore a paradigm, you do it right. And what I mean by that is, you can paradigm shift and things like that. But if you're going to do Hermetic magic, then follow the rules of Hermetic magic while you're doing it. If you're going to do Goetia, follow the damn rules while you're doing it, or any of these other systems. And then you can paradigm shift out and do something else. But when you're in that system, by God, follow what it says in the manual, because those rules are there for a reason. And chaos magicians often get themselves into trouble by being too cavalier. But that said, but you, as a chaos magician, you preserve your ultimate freedom to walk out, and as I touched on before, that's really one of the best parts about chaos magic. Okay. Elijah says, in your experience, is it dangerous for people to begin the practice of magic when they have a lot of repressed emotions or issues they haven't dealt with? And speaking of spirits, my Alexa is just talking from the other room. Okay. Is it dangerous? It can be very counterproductive. And Israel Regardie obviously quite famously said that people should have a year of therapy, preferably Reichian therapy, before they start magic. I think that's a great idea. I wish people still did that. Unfortunately, it's so popular now that, we don't have time to handhold people individually. But I think that in general, a concept that you should be very familiar with is spiritual bypassing, right? This is a phrase that's come into vogue in the last few years. Spiritual bypassing is when people think that spiritual or magical practices will fix or heal their personality, right? Look, we all come into the world with issues. We have childhood issues. We have traumas. Or even if we don't have traumas, then, it takes a long time to mature and grow as an adult. I mean, you don't really get to be a full adult until you're at least in your 30s, right? And all the time before that, you're just a maniac running around trying to fuck everything, right? And just stumbling through life, pardon my language. You don't really start to really become an adult until you're in your 30s and you've been beaten down by life a few times and you've seen where the walls are and where the boundaries are to life. So to come at magic from an immature perspective, or a perspective where you have a lot of unresolved issues or trauma, yes, it does become dangerous in the sense that people use it as a band-aid, and they use it to try and get out of doing the work of becoming a human being. So if I was to give you a goal for magic, I think that the goal of magic at least should be becoming more human, becoming a more well-rounded and fully fleshed out human being, instead of trying to, do chaos magic to become, like, invoke Tzeentch from Warhammer or 40K or, like, whatever. Classic chaos tricks. So I think that, and my approach to magic and spirituality is, I'm interested in things that just make me a more whole and happy human being at this point in my life. And in my late teens and my 20s, I did all the edgelord stuff, messed around with Goetia and the Qliphoth and tunnels and Voodoo and anything I could get my hands on. And I wanted to be the edgiest of the edgy and do all the dark stuff. And There were some benefits to that, but it also just caused just tremendous amount of wreckage in my life, and it was just, when we do these things from an immature perspective, it's not particularly productive. So, so I recommend checking out that concept of spiritual bypassing and understanding that magic does not make you special, right? Magic does not give you some type of power that other people don't have, and it doesn't fix you inherently. You have to do the work of fixing and healing the personality and becoming a full human, right? It's not even about being healed or better or special. It's just about being a human being, right? Be a person. A lot of times when we interact with people who are real hardcore into magic, they're like goblins. They become very goblin-like because they've spent their whole life talking to the goetic critters and stuff like that. That's not what you want, right? That's not a life you want, I hope. Or maybe it is because you're in the Chaos Magic Facebook group. But I think that a better goal is to just strive to be more human by developing relationships and a career path and hobbies and interests, just like everyone else. And magic is there to facilitate that. And that is alchemy. That is the great work, right? Of turning lead into gold, the lead of a basic, scattered and unenlightened human life into a whole and enlightened human life, right? This is what we should be aiming for. So that's my take on magic, personally. I think that's much more productive than all the edgelord stuff and all the spirit contact stuff. Okay. Let's see, more questions. Maybe I should let me reload the thread. All right. Tommy asks, do you have a daily magic practice? If so, what is it? Okay, another great question from Tommy. Yes, I've been doing magic daily or multiple times a day for the last 2 decades, right? Without giving you I'm not going to break down the specifics of my magical practice because that would be telling, right? But I will say that meditation, I think that half an hour to an hour of meditation a day, and preferably twice a day, should be the core of anyone's magical discipline. And that really is the be-all and end-all with magic, because what we're really trying to do with magic is turn off the mind. That's a much more overarching and important goal than interacting with the phantoms of your mind. When we're doing evocation or invocation or sigils and all this stuff with chaos magic, that stuff is all great, but you have to realize that you're interacting with, the astral, or you're just interacting with different levels of illusion. You're still in Maya. You're still interacting with different levels of Maya. They're just the inner parts of Maya. They're the cartoony occult parts of Maya, but it's still an illusion. And so the overall goal is to turn your damn mind off, right? And your mind, as you proceedingly silence it, will throw out, all the gods and spirits and angels and demons and all that shit, right? Which is, again, all illusion. It's illusion, right? It's not real. It's real if you make it real, if you take it seriously. But, magicians tend to wallow in in Maya, in the forms of Maya, the masks of Maya. And the goal is to turn your damn mind off, to not have to think, to not have to deal with all that, to just be, and be here in your body and not hypnotized by your own mind, which is really just your body. Your mind and your body are the same thing. And when you're, when you don't understand the nature of reality, it's easy to get caught up with the forms of the mind that it throws out. And the next thing you know, you can end up worshiping the damn things, the illusions your mind creates, and it's creating grimoires of demons and stuff. It's just, it's shit that's thrown out by an unquiet mind, and angels, demons, and everything in between. So the point is meditation, and whether that's Hindu meditation or Buddhist meditation. I love Kundalini type yoga or Kriya. I love Vipassana. I recommend to anyone if you want to take chaos magic seriously at its deepest root, take a Vipassana retreat, for God's sake. It's a 10-day retreat or you just meditate the whole time by focusing on your body, and then we'll see, if you can deal with Kia and the void and Karanzan and the ape of Thoth and all of these symbols and glyphs that have been laid down by previous magicians to talk about things that the mind does in states of progressively deep meditation, right? So in terms of my daily practice, meditation is the core of it. That's why I make meditation so central to everything that I teach at Magick.me. And I harp on it, and I become repetitive. Where every time I talk about magic, I say meditation, 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 right? And ultimately, the style doesn't matter so much, but I repeat it and I repeat it and I repeat it, and I will keep repeating it until people hear me, because the other way. The way of pure magic without any meditation is just the path of becoming enslaved to the delusions of your mind. And those can be productive and you can do things for them. Sure, you can do a sigil to get a job. Sure, you can conjure this, that, or the other thing to make you feel more confident about yourself or feel better about yourself. Magic is great. Magic is wonderful. Magic is fun and cool and sexy, right? And I wouldn't teach it otherwise. But when it's not coupled with the insights of meditation, which is really the insight of understanding that it's generated by not just your mind, but the universal mind, and understanding that everything is inherently empty, as the Buddha said, and that everything is empty of intrinsic nature, that there is no intrinsic nature to everything because everything is formed only by connections to other things. And everything is in a process of change and chaos and flux. And therefore, there is no substantial or tangible reality to anything, which, by the way, doesn't mean that it still won't, a car still isn't going to hit you if you walk into the middle of the street, or a goetic demon still isn't going to eat your brain if you approach it the wrong way. But that said, everything is inherently empty and intangible. And when we don't couple magic with this, we end up mugging ourselves, So this is why I'm so heavy on meditation. But, in terms of my daily practice, it depends. I almost constantly do magic. I would say my personal interest has been Enochian for a long time. And some of the additions to Enochian that were made by the Thelemic magicians, some of the interfaces and handholds that Crowley and Parsons and the people that came after him were into. But I think that, in terms of magic, the conclusion that I've come to is certainly that Enochian and the Golden Dawn and Thelemic interfaces that were put on it is, for me, the most interesting form of magic. I was into hardcore Hinduism and Tantra and Agora for a long time. And that stuff is fascinating, but, I'm a Western magician at the end of the day, so I'm most interested in the Western magical tradition and exploring pretty much every angle of it, particularly the Hermetic Golden Dawn, Masonic, Thelemic angles on it. I haven't, to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't cracked open a book on chaos magic for, outside of, unless I'm teaching it, like I haven't cracked open like Liber Null or something like that for years and years and years, because that stuff is kind of entry level, to be perfectly frank with you. And as you get further into meditation and getting into actual spiritual traditions, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you can get into altered states. Like, yes, I know that. Thank you. I've been getting into them quite consistently for years. Sigils. Okay. Like, we know this, right? Anyways. Let's see. Questions. Actually, there's not so many questions, so I'll just go through and answer all the ones that are remaining. All right. Tommy asked, do you still use sigils? Yes, but not very often. Yeah, I do use sigils, and actually, I finally read Gordon White's books, and I thought he had a lot of good ideas in those, particularly the ecological self, which he mentions in Pieces of Eight, which I thought was a pretty good model of self. And, his idea of sigil shoaling, I think, is pretty interesting. But in general, I'll use sigils now and then, but you get to a point with Magick where you stop trying to control reality, and it's much more about a devotional process of just trying to understand what reality is telling you in the first place. Because look, one thing that we glean from practices like taking the Oath of the Abyss and things like that, is that the universe is already sentient and alive and trying to interact with and play with you, right? And trying to give you things already. And it's kind of about becoming aware of that and becoming aware of the gifts and the karma that positive karmas you've already been given. And when we're born, I think that we're kind of already dealt a hand of cards to play. And it becomes increasingly important to focus on that in the way that Crowley talked about the true will. And one of the great insights that I got on this quite a while ago is that, the world, the universe is already trying to give you so many things. And one of the ways that magicians fuck themselves up, and I relate this, very clearly with the idea of the ape of Thoth, right? Magicians constantly fuck themselves up by trying to force things and min-max things and micromanage things and manifest things. And what can end up happening as people get too obsessed with the technical processes of at least sorcery instead of more, I have a much more theurgic approach, a devotional approach, as people get wrapped up with the mechanics of sorcery, particularly if they're coming from kind of a hard-headed or atheistic viewpoint, they end up distracting themselves from the world. They end up distracting themselves from the good things they already have in their life. And there's the classic Indian story about this of they'll tell you in India if you go there, where they talk about a sadhu who meditates on the side of the Ganges for 20 years to gain the siddhi of being able to walk on water. And after 20 years, his tapas and his meditation has finally reached a point where he gains the siddhi of walking on water, the magical power, and he walks across the Ganges to the other side triumphantly, at which point he finds a ferryman who says, it was 30 rupees to cross the river in a ferry boat, right? Could have done it that easily. And sometimes I think magicians are like this, where we obsess over the occult and occult powers and things like this and kind of miss out on life in the meantime and miss out on what's already happening all around you. So if I'd have one message for magicians, it's kind of get out of your head and get out of your when you get into magic, you get into this intense internal dialogue with yourself where you start associating meaning to everything and doing sigils constantly and thinking that spirits and gods are manifesting and things like that. And I would say, at least for a while, just get out of that. Get out of that inner dialogue and just stop and be still and go outside and pay attention to what's happening right in front of your face. Magic is a language for contextualizing and understanding what's right in front of you. And that's the point, I think that the point should be dropping the boundary between yourself and existence and fully participating in it as a fully alive and aware human being, and understanding that, by the way, magic is not something you do. And I want you to hear me very clearly on this. Magic is not something that you do. It's not something that emerges out of technical processes of sorcery, or that you have to get certain amount of gnosis and magical link to make something happen. Magic is an emergent property of the universe. It just happens. Go to back in the day, we used to be able to take ecstasy and go to raves, and you would get that very clearly. But you can't really do that so much anymore, or maybe you can, depending on where you are. But go out into nature. Go out into random and unpoliced areas, and unpoliced meaning kind of like the places in our world where there's still chaos and wildness, and it is not regimented and full of people looking at their phones, or just malls and shopping experiences. Go to places where there's still chaos and danger, and you'll see very clearly that, as Hakim Bey so famously and infamously put it back in the 80s, the universe wants to play. The universe does want to play, and magic spontaneously emerges out of the universe as an emergent property of the universe. And as magicians, it should be down to us to just be able to notice that and participate in it as conscious beings. And I don't want this to sound new agey or hallmarky, but I'm trying to communicate things that it took me 20 years to learn at great cost and suffering to myself. So hopefully, at least somebody listening hears that. Okay. Anima asks, what's your most favorite magic book? Good question. My favorite magic book, and nobody even knows about this one, is called I'm Over Here by E.E. Remus. And actually, I'll grab a copy to show you real quick. It's from the early 60s. Ah, shit. All right. If anyone's ever heard of this book, by the way, I will be quite impressed. Okay. This is I'm Over Here. E.E. Remus. Okay. That's him, if you look closely. So this book was written in Sausalito, California in 1962. This is a hidden text of chaos magic. This is chaos magic long before Peter Carroll. Here's the first drawing. And this is I think this was before LSD was even synthesized, if I'm correct. But it's kind of like a early 60s zine, in a way. But it's all about basically chaos magic. Here we go. You can see there's a drawing of an astrologer's parlor there with all the planetary sigils. So Remus, you might know, he wrote a book called The Magician's Dictionary, which was published by Feral House in the 90s, which was subtitled An Apocalyptic Encyclopedia, and it was a list of magical terms. But this was his first one that he did in the early 60s. He's now died, very sadly, Ed Remus. Here we go. Here's his drawing of an occultist in his parlor with books stacked up. Pretty funny. Here's his prophecy for the future. He says, there'll be nary room for hermits as the population skyward goes. You will need a special permit when you want to blow your nose. When the sun goes into nova, as it certainly soon must do, all the seas will turn to soda and bubblegum me and you. Pretty spot on. So here we go. Here's another. Here's his drawing of an Atlantean sorcerer. So so I'm glad you asked me this question. This is my favorite book on magic, and I don't think anyone remembers it, but you can probably still find it on Abe Books or Amazon or something like that. Oh, here we go. Here's his prophecies for the future from 1962. Let's see if any of these turned out to be true. The following prophecies are made for the latter half of this 20th century. 1. There will be a war of many swords, and the worst engines of destruction are to be used. Man cannot help but tamper with any toy that falls into his hands, no matter how lethal. The 4 horsemen will gallop across this planet as they have never galloped before, and this will occur in the first third of the allotted time, if not by the time this is read. Well, there was no nuclear war, but, there was some nastiness. 2. After the war, psychology will make great strides, inasmuch as religion will at last have revealed itself for the false solace it is. There will be less gnashing of teeth. I'd say that's accurate. 3. China will pass through a great renaissance, ushering in the new cycle of history. Capitalism and communism alike will have passed into the grave. Woe to the West. That's absolutely accurate. I mean, China is completely taking over now. And woe to the West. And capitalism and communism are falling apart, and China will probably be the dominant power of the 21st century. Again, written in 1962. 4, there will be there will be great disappointment at the paucity and dullness and life found on the nearby planets. Men will begin to conclude that they are indeed alone in a barren universe with none but themselves to aid them. 5, leisure will be used more and more futilely until the last of the great amusements appears on the scene. Electronic art. It is here that art will reveal its fraudulence in the same way as religion and science. 100% accurate. 6, there will be an era of vast individualism wherein novelty will be praised for its own sake, and men will make a fetish of the bizarre. Horizons gone, we will look within. 100% accurate. 7, last one. When there is no longer any doubt, the race will decide collectively to implode itself. This is indescribable and may only be hinted at by saying that the number 3 at century's end will have a vast and new emotional connotation to it. Not sure what that's about, but we certainly could implode any day now. So yeah, I'm over here by E.E. Remus, Ed Remus, the great lost, forgotten progenitor of chaos magic. Yeah, okay, let's see if there's any other questions. What courses have you planned for Magick.me? Well, the most important one right now is I'm teaching a class on angelic and Enochian magic. That's going to be live on Sunday, this Sunday, the 22nd. And that's, again, free to anyone who has who buys John Dee and the Empire of Angels, my new book, which I'll just show it again for anyone who's just come into the live stream. This is out today. If you buy this on Amazon and then send me proof of purchase through the link that I have in this YouTube, and I'll put an Amazon link to this also, you get a free class on Enochian and angelic magic. And if you can't make the time on Sunday, it'll be recorded for you, but you will not be able to get access to that course in any other way other than as a free course, as a complimentary course if you buy this book before the 21st, and pre-orders and ebooks count. So if you live in the UK and the book's not out yet there, you can still pre-order it before the 21st, and you'll get access to the course. Outside of that, there's all I will say is there's a lot more coming, particularly since, if you followed my work, and if you followed Ultra Culture and these things, then you know that I've basically been in a cave for the last 3 years, and I've been, rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated, but I've been kind of AWOL, just because I was working on that book 24/7. I mean, I was literally doing nothing but sitting in an office writing about Enochian nonstop every day for, certainly 2 years in the broader process of 3 years of doing all the bits and pieces around the book. So now that I'm out of that, and once I finish this promotion, I'll be doing a lot more classes. So that's all I'll say. Keep an eye out at Magick.me. If you haven't already signed up for the free course from Magick.me, you can get it very simply by, actually through your phone. All you have to do is text the word shaman, S-H-A-M-A-N, shaman, to the phone number 44222. So just text the word shaman to the phone number 44222, and you get my free introductory course on magic through there. Okay, and then through that, you'll be updated on any future courses. Let's see if there's any remaining questions. Greatest magical success. That no gentleman would answer such a question. Greatest magical failure. Well, maybe I should answer. Well, let's see. I'll just say this. Any time that you spend at any point in your life that you stop believing in yourself, that is a failure. Or any time that you're tempted to turn your back on magic or turn your back on the great work, or your resolve falters, this can be considered failure. But ultimately, if you take from that experience that you shouldn't do that, then it's no longer a failure. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. From a non-Christian perspective, why do you think the angels gave John Dee the order to expand the British Empire? Was this just the angels talking in a language Dee could understand because it was already a part of his life? Because they wanted Christianity to spread across the whole world. And one of the things that I say surfaced in that book is that what the angels really wanted was one totalizing world religion which would unify Protestantism, Catholicism, paganism, Judaism, and Islam into one super hermetic world religion that would be ministered by the Enochian angels, and that would be terrestrially controlled by Elizabeth as the Christian world emperor or empress. That's why they wanted a British Empire. They want to control the planet. Jonathan asks, I'm a freelance writer and editor in Brooklyn. What do you think Ultra Culture's audience wants to read about most? The answer to that question is always what you're most passionate about. I don't assign article topics. You're welcome to send your resume and clips to admin@ultraculture.org. And I can't promise that I will look at them soon because I'm so caught up in book promotion, but I will look at it at some point. Julian says, I've seen you talk a bit negative about Golden Dawn and Thelema systems in an old interview with Alex Gray. You called them broken. What do you think about these systems now? Okay, I'm actually glad you're asking this. So I uploaded this old interview that I did with Alex Gray from like 2007. And you have to understand the context of that interview, which was I was very much going through this abyss moment. And this is what I will say more broadly. I think that the Western magical tradition... Okay, look, this is how I'm going to answer this question, all right? There have been many broken parts of the Western magical tradition. The Golden Dawn was great, but they didn't get it academically right very altogether. They kind of made a mishmash, a beautiful mishmash, but they overlaid too much stuff on top of Enochian. Crowley made some profound contributions to Western magic, although really the most profound things that Crowley did, in my opinion, were published the Golden Dawn stuff in contravention of his oaths, without which we would have forgotten it, and also published the stuff that Alan Bennett gave him. I think that the most interesting stuff in Thelema is actually from Alan Bennett, like, for instance, Liber E and some of the other stuff. Parsons made great strides in advancing magic into the future, but Parsons made a lot of magical errors, and he blew himself up at 38, which didn't really leave us with a whole lot. So I don't think I don't think anyone would argue that Western magic has been, has had some false starts and stops, and that people have been into Western magic who just took it too seriously or came at it with the wrong intentions. And you can argue that I think Crowley probably did, at least in certain parts of his life, which I argue in this book as well. But my ultimate answer is, this is the patch, okay? This is the fix for Western magic. That's really what this is. And I obviously don't promote it that way to a general audience because they won't know what I'm talking about. But, okay, so this is a biography of John Dee and the Empire of Angels, right? It's a biography of John Dee and Crowley and Parsons and Enochian. What is this really? This is the patch for Western magic, okay? Flat out, right? That's what it is. I put it back together. If that's interesting, then this is the book. And that's why I spent 3 years on it, because that's a patch that needed to be done. And it needed to be pieced back together, at least as one coherent story, as a springboard for future students and as a springboard for future people who enter the stream of the practices. They need to understand what it actually is and where it came from and what the actual context is, instead of what most people end up doing, which is getting kind of caught up in Crowley's qliphothic backwash, right? Or chaos magic, which is great, but chaos magic is kind of like cliff notes in a way for the Western magical tradition. Again, potentially controversial opinion, but in recent years people have been saying things like, oh, well, Goetia is the real Western magical tradition, things like this. Just get the book. That's all I have to say. There is a real Western magical tradition, okay? It's hundreds of years old. It's far older. It's potentially thousands of years old. It certainly goes back at least the last 500 years. There is a real ongoing tradition of which people like Crowley, have been part of, but they're not the be-all, end-all of it. And if you want to understand what Western magic really is, then this is the book. Okay. Julian asks, how do you see this exactly from a non-Christian perspective? I don't. You have to see it from a Christian perspective. Another controversial opinion. I like to talk about Christianity because occultists they do the reverse of, usually in Hammer horror movies, a vampire will show up and somebody will do the cross, and the vampire will be like, and well, I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm not the magician. I'm not the evil sorcerer. Well, maybe I am an evil sorcerer, of course. But one of the best ways to troll occult people is to talk about Christianity and take it seriously. So, the real answer to your question is you can't understand the Western magical tradition outside of the context of Christianity. It's an outgrowth of Christianity. And in fact, in the book, what I argue is that what the Western magical tradition actually is esoteric Protestantism. It's the esoteric branch of the Protestant Reformation, of Lutheranism and Calvinism and the Anglican Church. And in the same way that the Jesuits and the Holy Orders were kind of the esoteric branch of Catholicism and things like Sufism. Sufism is the esoteric branch of Islam, Kabbalah of Judaism, so on and so forth, Tantra and Hinduism and Buddhism. In the same way, the esoteric inner order of Protestantism is the Western magical tradition. And, that's going to drive people up the wall, I'm sure. Whatever. It's historically accurate, so they can deal with it. I guess my final answer is, and people have done things like, for instance, the Temple of, the Church of Satan and Temple of Set. Louv and Aquino did this thing where they tried to make the satanic version of Enochian by taking the calls and replacing the name of God with Satan. Okay, well, Hot Topics, down 3 stores down in the mall if you want to take an application, right? I mean, it's not academically valid or historically accurate. So, I think that in understanding the Western magical tradition, you have to understand that A, it's an outgrowth of Christianity, and that B, as I argue in the book, the so-called, satanic or inversion currents of the Western magical tradition, like Thelema or like the satanic orders, it's not non-Christian. As I say in the book, you can't rebel against the popularity of Star Wars by putting on a Darth Vader mask. That's just silly, right? And that's what satanic people do. And but I think that in terms of other religions like Buddhism and Hinduism and stuff like that, they don't really have a whole lot of overlap with Enochian. But Enochian is the Western magical tradition, and you can't understand the Western magical tradition without understanding the history and context of Christianity. You can't. You just can't, because Christianity has been the dominant religion for the last 2,000 years in the West. Or at least since Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, So trying to understand Western magic without understanding Christianity it's not possible. Whatever our personal prejudices are, and I'm not saying become a Christian. I'm just saying that it's like from an academic sense. It's like trying to strip out Tantra from Hinduism or something like that. You can't do that. It's like it's not possible. There's a broader story and a broader context that these things come out of. All right, we're running. Let's see. Let me see if oh my God, there's a ton of YouTube. I'll just see if there's any ones in the YouTube. All right. Thank you to everyone who has nice comments. Tommy says, in a non-magic question, what webcam are you using? It's really good quality. It's a Logitech 1080p that I got a few years ago, and I think it's just like the #1 selling webcam on Amazon. It's like $70, and much recommended. Although I wish I could get the stream quality up. Okay. Will the environment be better, or will we continue to destroy the planet's environment? We will continue to destroy the planet's environment unless we come up with technological fixes for producing less waste as a civilization and cleaning up the issues that we already have. So I do think that if you are a magician and you are interested in, if you have technological or engineering skills, I don't think there's any more important great work right now than to come up with technological solutions for the problems that humanity faces. These are going to be much more important than spiritual fixes, because as we've seen, the masses are not going to wake up. They're going to keep on being as dumb as they are, right? What is there to say about it? Let's be frank. My generation of chaos magicians, in the 90s, we thought that there would be a great mass awakening and that everyone would become, some enlightened Buddha. Look, people were on a lot of ecstasy back then. And it's just not going to happen, okay? It's not. I think that there will be increasing enlightenment. There will be an increasing popularity of spirituality, but we're not going to get to, for instance, planetary enlightenment before we get to planetary collapse, okay? It's just coming too fast. The ice caps are melting. The ice caps are going to be melted long before everyone decides to spend 30 years meditating, right? It's just not going to happen. So I think that if you are a magician, and by whatever good karma or bad karma, you happen to be here listening to me, then what I would recommend is putting your resources into finding practical solutions and technological solutions to humanity's problems instead of trying to wake them up, because this only goes so far, and we're about to hit the wall. So we need, for instance, things like AIs that are capable of cleaning up environmental pollution, and autonomous robots that are capable of cleaning up toxins in the environment, and things like renewable fuel solutions that actually work and are actually scalable, and the types of things that Elon Musk is doing, and off-world travel. So there's a lot of comments here. So would you say the Syrian issues are a part of Albert Pike's plan of being the New Age? People get way too conspiratorial about the Masons. This is what I'll say. Syria, the destruction of the Middle East, is very much a part of the ongoing script of the apocalypse and trying to bring about the apocalypse, which I talk about at great length in this book as something that has been core to not just the Western magical tradition, but the evangelical right for hundreds of years. And you can argue that it comes directly out of the work of Dee and even Crowley. So for more on that, definitely check the book, because it's a pretty involved argument. Glad you like the podcasts. Sarah Rec creeps me out. Okay. Let's see. What do you think of the Golden Dawn system and doing the elemental grades? Okay, good question. I think the Golden Dawn system is awesome. It doesn't really take you that far, but I think that magicians should do it. Magicians should take it seriously. I don't know about, I can't vouch for any current Golden Dawn order. I've never done those rituals in temple settings, but I think that reading that stuff and doing the rituals on your own is a great way to get started practicing magic, or, do Don Craig's stuff. The Golden Dawn elemental grades are meant to balance out the elemental components of your makeup, which is a critical part of the magical process. What I will say is that the Golden Dawn took Enochian and turned it into the basics of elemental. They turned it into something that it's not, right? Where they overlaid all this Kabbalah and Egyptian stuff on top of it. And then the Golden Dawn used Enochian as the bedrock of their system, but unfortunately, that's not what it is, right? Enochian is something very different. Okay, I'm just going to answer a few more questions because I got to get going to keep promoting the book. And I apologize that I'm not going to be able to get everything in the stream, but your recent work is very essential to most magicians, Jason. Thank you. What's the best work to do to gain employment? Not only in general, but finding what career path you're actually meant for or really want to do. Great question. I think that you should get clear on what you actually want out of your life. Okay, you want to get employment? This is what you do. Figure out what you're passionate about, and then work at it nonstop every day without worrying about whether people are paying you to do it or not. I can tell you, like, to be a writer, for instance, you have to go through, decades potentially of just writing nonstop without anyone seeing it, and rejection. Every writer goes through years and years of rejection. And I think it's the same for any career. Any career that you want to pursue, people are going to tell you no, and they're going to slam doors in your face, and they're going to set up walls and tests that the weak will not pass. And that stuff is set up by the universe or by people so that people prove they really want something. Because if you actually get a job or you get a career, you're going to have to be committed to it, whether that's for a few years or for the rest of your life. So this becomes a be careful what you wish for thing. So what I would say is figure out what you're passionate about and what you want to do and what you want to give to the world. And that can be an overlap of your talents and your passions. And then just do it nonstop until you get really good at it. And if that's something creative, the good thing now is that you can do it on the internet. You can start it, or really, one thing I do recommend practically is whatever it is that you're interested, whatever career you're interested in pursuing, start a blog about it and start blogging about your process in learning the skills or performing the skills and getting that information out there, and do a podcast about it. And at first it can just be about learning, but through doing that, you'll make connections with other people and you'll get confidence in becoming an expert at something, which is what people want to see. And as that progresses, you will not only develop more skills, but begin to network and find the people who want to work with you. They'll find you through your blog. So that's the practical thing that I'll do. I'll recommend, find what it is you're passionate about, and then start doing it obsessively, because you've got to care about it more than the reward. Otherwise, it's just becomes a job, and nobody wants just a job, right? You want something that you're passionate about. So, but blog and do it online so it's in public and not just in your head. Okay, let's see. Any other last questions? Great AMA, thank you. People who need meditation the most will not do it. Sometimes that's true. Let's see. I'm a young millennial. I've only recently gotten the confidence to start practicing after years of reading about it, and I think it would benefit me to find a real-life community to learn from. A problem I have is that a lot of people I've met are part of that immature edgelord crowd. Would you recommend finding a community, or should I wait until I've learned a little more on my own? There's pros and cons to community. As somebody who's been involved in magical groups for a long time, I would say that there's very good things about them in that they help you evolve faster, but also they can be cults, there can be groupthink. So people find positive communities and negative ones. I do recommend exploring different communities in your, and don't just confine yourself to occult stuff. Look at spiritual things, or Masonic lodges is a good one, or just interest groups for things that are maybe not even related to magic. But that aside, we do have a Discord that's connected to magic.me, which is free. You can find it just by going to magic.me or Ultraculture. It's linked off of Ultraculture. And that's going pretty strong now. We've got 800 people, and there's a great sense of community and camaraderie there. And, I'm quite regularly doing live streams and things like that there. So check that out for some community if you like. Okay, it seems like... Okay, I'm noticing that I seem to get tripped up by lack of self-confidence. I've definitely improved on this. It's something I work on a little bit every day. Do you have any good practical ways to manage the discouragement I feel sometimes? Just harden up. Because you're going to get discouraged and people are going to be assholes to you. They're going to slam doors in your face. The only advice I have is just keep picking yourself up and subjecting yourself to it. And you have to get angry sometimes. You have to get into a mindset that's like, the winning mindset is I'll do it. I don't care. I don't give it, I don't care what people say. So I think the only practical advice I would say is You don't care about other people's reactions. Care about getting to your goal, not what other people are, how people are responding to you. Okay, I think that's probably all the questions. All right. I think I've answered most of the questions. If there were any that I missed, then I apologize. It's now almost 11:30. That's the end of the AMA, and the mailman is here. One second, let me grab the mail. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Non-stop occultist Amazon Prime book orders. Okay. My final point. So, yes, so I will just leave you with today is the day of release of John Dee and the Empire of Angels. I will put the direct Amazon link to this in the Facebook group right after I get off the call. Or you can go to johnd007.com or just Google or just search John Dee on Amazon. It's the first thing that pops up. Get yours before they go, because the first print run has already is close to selling out, because it's the first print run has already gone to the distributors. You only have a few days to get a copy of the first edition, and it's probably going to go up in value afterwards. The Psychic Bible, people are trying to sell that for like $2,000 on Amazon used book section, which is the last hardback occult book I did. So you've only got a few days if you want the first edition. But the good news also, in addition to that, is that by the end of, if you buy a copy of this by the 21st, you get access to the free course on angelic and Enochian magic if you send me the purchase receipt, but send it through the email address that's at the class that's linked in the YouTube comments, or just go to magick.me and the angelic class is right at the top. So instructions on how to redeem the class are in that post. So there you go. I have this book for you. I have a free course for you. And if you just go to jasonlouv.com, you see all my other stuff. So all the free podcasts and videos and blogs and ebooks, and there's so much stuff there. So thank you again for having this, and I will talk to you soon. And if you happen to be in LA, I'm appearing at the LA Times Book Festival on Saturday, and then the live course is on Sunday. So hopefully I will see you either at the book festival, or I will see you in the live course on Sunday. And so until then, talk to you then, and stay out of trouble. All right.